Hi everyone, it's John. It's Friday afternoon, and I have been trying to use this slump in work that I've been having around the holidays. I guess you could call it sort of a vacation, but it's really not. It's sort of things slow down naturally at this time of the year for me to read more and maybe get some more reviews posted to Goodreads and YouTube. So I finished a book recently and wrote up a review yesterday, and I just wanted to share it with you. And at the end of the video, by the way, I also want to, in case you're not familiar with, introduce you to something. And if you might have heard of it, maybe tell you a little bit more and convince you to maybe try it out. But I'll save that for the end. What I want to tell you about today is this thing. It is The World of King Arthur. You can barely see the author's name, but it's Christopher Snyder, and it's published by Thames and Hudson. So it's kind of, if you can tell, kind of an oversized book. Not terribly thick, but has the virtue of being, as I say in the review, sort of a coffee table-like book. You can tell a lot of black and white pictures, but also tons of ones in full color. I hope you can see that. But this is what I wanted to talk about today. My edition, at least, of The World of King Arthur by Christopher Snyder looks a lot more like a coffee table book, like I said, than something that really calls for a full-on review. It's replete with illustrations and paintings, including the prerequisite works of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, who seem to have kind of an inordinate obsession with anything related to Arthuriana. And as a layman's introduction to the history of Arthur and Arthur studies as a cultural and literary and possibly historical group of things to study, Arthur as a person to study, this book is kind of hard to beat for a layman's introduction. All the illustrations might lead you to think that it was mostly fluff, but it actually contains a lot of really good scholarship, including the archaeological evidence for a quote-unquote Arthur-like figure, Arthur's increasingly important role in medieval literature as time went on, the introduction of new characters into the Arthurian oeuvre, and storytellers who wrote about Arthur, who used him as a kind of a cipher to discuss the themes that were resonant in their own time. Snyder even looks at more contemporary incarnations of the Arthur stories as they appear in places like the operas of Richard Wagner, books like White's The Once and Future King, John Copper Powis's The Glastonbury Romance, and film. I personally didn't realize that a lot of the archaeological evidence that has been done in the area has only been done maybe in the last 60 to 80 years. One of the biggest contributors to the area in particular was Leslie Alcock, whose book, he wrote a book in 1971 called Arthur's Britain, History and Archaeology, AD 367 to 634, which I recently completed and I will also be posting a review of within the next couple of weeks here on YouTube. A sizable part of Snyder's book is dedicated to looking at the major archaeological sites, including Tintagel, Cadbury, and Glastonbury Abbey. Snyder also gives a brief review of the post-Roman occupation of Britain, including by the Celts, the Jutes, the Picts, the Angles, and the Saxons. Despite the extensive field research, there's actually really no definitive evidence for anyone like Arthur existing. However, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that makes people really consider the preponderance of the case. It doesn't really hang on any one question, but rather just an overall picture. A lot of people think that someone like Arthur, again, that Arthur-like figure, was more likely than not someone that did exist, and what was a Christian king in sub-Roman Britain, who tried to fight off foreign invaders. Like I said, there is a preponderance of evidence whose weight builds a case, and an especially convincing one for those, especially who are a bit carried away by the romance of the stories themselves. If you're unfamiliar with the development of Arthurian legends, you could be forgiven for sort of naively thinking that all of the legends just sort of popped up out of nowhere over a period of maybe a generation or two, with all of their characters perfectly in situ. Parsifal, Galahad, Lancelot, Merlin, etc. But many of the major figures were introduced piecemeal, literarily speaking, over long periods of time, centuries, actually. One of the tasks Snyder performs the best is describing how the canonical stories in the Arthur group of stories developed. From the very earliest mentions in the Welsh Chronicles, the 7th and 8th centuries, to Geoffrey of Monmouth, and then to the 12th century Norman poet by the name of Vace, and then of course to later figures like Mallory. I would imagine that for the serious student of Arthur legends and Arthuriana, this book doesn't present much in the way of new material to be learned. But if you're just a rank neophyte like me, who's interested in some just sort of reinforcing some material that he's read in other places, this really more than serves its purpose, and as I tried to show earlier, happens to be visually appealing too. So, while it doesn't look like much in the way of a reference book, I hope to hang on to it for pretty much that purpose, since it addresses kind of every question I ever had reading any other book on this group of subjects. And, of course, as you can probably tell by looking at it, is written for a popular audience, never sacrifices its readability, all of that good stuff. So, the thing I wanted to tell you about, I'm sure everyone reads for their own different reasons, whether it is for pleasure. Some people read to learn, right? I think probably most of us read for both in some sort of combination. I happen to be a subscriber to the Great Courses Plus. And I think everyone knows the Great Courses. You may have seen their catalogs that you just randomly get mailed sometimes, or stumbled across them on Facebook or whatever. The Great Courses is this company where you can buy individual courses. You mail them a check and they'll send you, 12 or 24 or 6 CDs about Anglo-Saxon England, or a history of, a cultural history of China or something like that. The Great Courses Plus is a little bit different. Before I go any further, in no way associated with Great Courses Plus. They don't know me from Adam in my tiny, tiny little corner of YouTube. I don't think they would pay me even if I asked them. So this is just my own passionate interest in the company, and that's that. But I wanted to talk about them because, first of all, how they're different from the Great Courses, and also tell you something that ties in with the book. So instead of the Great Courses, which is where you buy individual courses one at a time, the Great Courses Plus, it's a streaming service, kind of like Hulu or Netflix, where you pay a monthly fee and you have access to everything on the service. And Netflix Plus has basically everything that Netflix Plus, Great Courses Plus has pretty much everything, with a few exceptions because of copyright issues with music and images, that Great Courses does. And they also come out with new courses, 3 or 4 every 4 weeks. One of the courses that they happen to have, and that I was very recently listening to, was, let me actually get the name. I think the course is actually called King Arthur. I'm looking at a particular lecture. Lecture 3 happens to be called King Arthur and the Latin Chronicles. But it is a 24 lecture course. Each one is 30 minutes long. Some of these courses are longer than others. Some are 36 lectures. Some are 48. But there's so much stuff on Great Courses Plus. There's a history of the Roman Empire, history of ancient Greece, tons of stuff on medieval culture, the Renaissance, science, hobby stuff like photography, history, lots of history. Just they're very often offering a free 30-month trial. And if you see one of those, it's one of those things where you can create an account, go in, look. If you're not satisfied, you don't have to buy anything. But if you like it, they offer, it's usually $20 a month, but every once in a while they'll do this thing where it's $30 every quarter, which if you do the math makes it half price. It's only $10 a month instead of $20. That's what I do now, because I'll have this probably for the rest of my life, or at least as long as it's offered. I will never give up my subscription unless it is pried from my cold dead hands. I watch it often. I watch it several hours a week, and I was going to show you a binder. I've printed out all of the course book, the course books for each course that I watch, and I read the supplementary materials, the suggested readings at the end, and I have probably 2 or 3 dozen course books printed out. They're, usually somewhere between 150 and 250 pages apiece. So anyway, that is another one of my obsessions, and they happen to have an entire course, like I said, on King Arthur, which makes reading the Alcock book, the Snyder book, and watching these courses all in tandem sort of a real education. But if you want to treat yourself to an extended Christmas present, it's pretty inexpensive. Again, in no way there are no links that you can click on the bottom, so you can rest assured there are no affiliate links. I'm not getting paid. They don't even know I exist. I can guarantee you. But if you have any words about Great Courses or Great Courses Plus, I would love to know if you've had any experiences with them. I found their customer service great, and there's so much material on there. I will never be able to exhaust all of it, even the stuff that I'm interested in. But if you know about The World of King Arthur by Christopher Snyder, or any other good books, not about the tales themselves, I pretty much have all of those in my library, but stuff about the history of them, the literary evaluations, criticism, all of that good stuff. I would love to hear recommendations along those lines as well. I will see you hopefully sometime next week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.